We're going to be talking about Leah Remini versus Laura Prepon. Also, the battle that Relatable Reese is deep into. And Scientology Audit Streets LA shares a really big win. Hey, everybody, and welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult. Thank you for everybody in the live chat for being here, the members as well, and of course, the moderators who help us keep the wheels on the bus. Make sure when you all enter the building here that you head over to that like button, show it a little bit of aloha, and check your subscribe as well. Make sure you're subscribed and your notification bell is set to all. Let's jump into some of the craziness. And before we get to what I'm very excited to talk about, because I want to know what you guys think about this, we're going to get into Leah Remini versus Laura Prepon and what happens when celebrities leave Scientology. So let's get into that tea in just a little bit. But first, let's take a look at some Scientology propaganda. And guess what? Scientology does not want you to be overweight. No, they do not. And we're going to go and look at how they are their latest thing here. They did a 5K run in Pasadena. Okay, so what do we know? What do we know? We know that Scientology likes to use different events as propaganda to what they call safe point themselves in the community. Look, we're legitimate. We're a legitimate church. Look at us. We do 5Ks. We run. We don't want people to be overweight. No, we don't. That legitimizes us, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. It doesn't, Scientology. So this is from their own press release here. 5K run at Pasadena Rose Bowl promotes healthy living. And here we got the kiddos on the scooters and their skates wearing Way to Happiness shirts. Blah, 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 blah. Talks about how L. Ron Hubbard's basic tenets of the Way to Happiness: take care of yourself. People who do not eat properly are not much of help to you or themselves. They tend to have low energy. They are sometimes ill-tempered. They become ill more easily. Okay, that's right from L. Ron Hubbard. So I would just like to call out early in the show here on a Saturday. We will gently wake up the Office of Special Affairs. Okay, maybe not so gentle. Here's the thing, my friends in the Office of Special Affairs in Scientology, when you put out press releases talking about how a lack of food could make you ill-tempered and a lack of food could make you ill, I don't know, you might want to not be feeding Sea Org members rice and beans, or outer org trainees, as you did with my daughter Shelby when she was training in Florida, was deprived food and as punishment for not making sales quotas had to eat rice and beans. So you might not want to be doing all that stuff and then over here in Pasadena being all like, oh, we're running, we're healthy. Food is important. No, fail. It's so ridiculous. I'm telling you, I know I say this every day. I just cannot with these people. So, it's bad enough they go on to talk about what happens if you don't eat enough. You have to take care of yourself. The FDA, more than 1 million Americans die every year from diet-related diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and certain forms of cancers. In 2020 alone, an estimated 80,000 people died from these things. I'm telling you, here's the thing then. Scientology, if you really cared about this, right? Doing a 5K, getting healthy, making sure you take care of yourself because of the diseases that can result. Why do you do sleep deprivation, food deprivation as punishments? And why don't Sea Org members get regular checkups with their doctor? Wouldn't that be part of it? Call me crazy. You guys tell me in the chat, tell me in the comments. How they're just speaking out both sides of their mouth here. And this is blatant Scientology propaganda to try and cover up the fact that Sea Organization members and staff members are deprived of food and sleep, a violation of their own L. Ron Hubbard Way to Happiness. It's ridiculous. Oh, yeah. Mary James, don't even get me started on the smoking. Girl, yes. Absolutely. Okay, now let's see. Enough of that. Links down below, by the way, to any of the articles or the videos that we're going to go over so you can go check them all out and see them all. Because we got some good ones today, people. There is so much happening, especially with the protests. And I just love it, especially in Europe, what's going on right now. But we will get to that. For now, let's go over and let's take a look at Phil Jones did another video talking about Scientology cease and desist. What happens when Scientology sends you a cease and desist letter? And Phil Jones talks about one that he got. We're going to look at a couple clips here so he can explain it, because wait until you hear this.
When delivered, you and every single one of your co-conspirators fully knew that Mr. Jones was not missing, in quotation marks.
And Mr. Jones is Michael, who is Phil and Willie Jones' son, and their daughter Emily also are in the C organization practicing Scientology's enforced disconnection.
And every single one of your co-conspirators knew that Mr. Jones was resident at a facility operated by Church of Scientology and was engaged in his services as a minister of that church. Now, Mike is not a minister. He's never done the minister's course. He doesn't audit people. He doesn't do weddings. He is responsible for setting up the events, scaffolding, sound, and lighting, and things like that.
So did you hear that? Phil Jones's son set up scaffolding, lighting for events, but he must have stood pretty close to a Scientology minister, because Scientology basically was saying that he's a minister. And we know how that works in Scientology, right? How does it work? Well, if you stand too closely to a Scientology organization, they might just count you as a Scientologist. And I feel like they're doing the same thing. Oh, he's a minister because he stood next to one of our ministers. He set up the scaffolding for one of our ministers. It's ridiculous.
So that they're calling him a minister is they're just trying to make it sound like we're attacking they want to sound a little bit more religious, which is somewhat difficult for Scientology to do. When delivered,
that's right, it is. They try, but that is the whole idea, to paint themselves as sounding like a legitimate religious organization. But joke's on them, because everybody knows. Everybody knows. They definitely know. They definitely know. Now let's take a look. Phil goes on to share how Phil and his wife Willie didn't know where their son was. So for them, he was missing, legitimately missing. And Scientology tries to say through their lawyers in their cease and desist that he's not missing. What do you mean he's missing? Just because his parents don't know where he is and haven't heard from him in years? Why would you think that's missing?
We're doing those missing posters, and we have plastered them all around Celebrity Center. And to us, Mike was missing. We hadn't heard from him or seen him in 2 years. They're saying we knew he was there, but we didn't know he was there. We thought, well, maybe they sent him off to Australia or something. We had no idea what was happening with our son. No word. We had nothing, no contact at all.
As a parent, if you have no contact from your child, even though that may be an adult child, and you've reached out and you highly suspect physically where they are, yet you're not hearing back, what are you going to think? You're going to think they're missing. You're going to think Scientology could have sent them somewhere, could have held them somewhere, because we have had reports and whistleblowers come out and talk about when they were detained by Scientology. I myself was put under security watch. That means someone had to watch me 24/7 to make sure I did not blow the C organization. That is what they do if they suspect that you're going to leave. They put you under 24-hour watch. It is such a thing. It totally is. Now, as part of the cease and desist letter, it said something very interesting that really made Phil go, wait a minute, there's no way Scientology could have had this information unless it was leaked to them by, can anybody guess? The LAPD. So let's take a look at this clip where Phil goes on to share that little tidbit.
One of our friends mentioned this thing about maybe after this, we could check with California or the Adult Protective Services. One sentence, that's all. We never pursued it. We never talked to them. We never reported to the Adult Protective Services. So how this got into Bert Dexler's letter is somebody in the LAPD heard us talking about it, literally one sentence, and reported that to Scientology, and that report, they assumed that not only were we talking about it, but that we did it, that we had gone to the Adult Protective Services. So it just shows a couple of things. One is that that how tight the LAPD, at least then, was, or that person, that officer was in with Scientology.
Exactly. So can you imagine that? You get a cease and desist. There's information there. You didn't do this. You didn't say it. They talked about it. They talked about the idea of doing this. But someone in the LAPD reported back to Scientology, and then it was included in the cease and desist. Shenanigans. Shenanigans abound, Scientology. Welcome everybody, all of the room raiders over from Coffee Cult and Crafts from Marilyn Honig's channel. Thank you for being here. Welcome and a big aloha as you're all coming in. Please be sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe as well. Okay, let's jump over now to Scientology Audit Streets LA, who had some really good news to share. If you've been following the story or any of Dodge Landisman's updates that he's been doing, you'll know that Solomon, who's 17, been protesting Scientology since he was 16, has been having issues with somebody on YouTube, and they took legal action. And guess what? Guess what? They won. So we're going to take a look at that clip. Hey, John, I just wanted to say hi because you reminded me here with the Mr. Bill thing there. My dog loves it. Loves that doll. He's always squeaking it in the background. So I just, again, wanted to say thank you. I don't know if you were in the chat when I had brought it up before, but every time I hear it and I see it, I think of you. Okay, so let's go over to Scientology Audit Streets LA and hear what he has to say.
You know what? On the ride home, I'm going to teach this guy a lesson. I'm going to teach this guy some stuff, right? So this guy is always like, oh, I'm going to call the FBI. He's never called anything. He's this guy, all he does is bluff. This guy is just a bluffer. I'm going to call this, I'm going to call that. What I am going to do, because it's been shown in court today that he violated the temporary restraining order. Right now, he can go to jail. I'm going to give a text to the deputy chief of West Bureau that's responsible for the area, Wilshire Division of Detectives. I'm going to send him a text message. I'm going to tell him we had this child predator named Tony D'Amato, a 54-year-old man. He's sexually harassing a kid who has a restraining order against you. Deputy Chief, what are you going to do about it? You know what?
What are you going to do about it? And if we know nothing about Scientology Audit Streets LA, William Good there, we know that he plays the long game and he follows through when he says he's going to do something. So yes, Mena Solomon for the win. Very happy because it was just really unnecessary what his family and he were experiencing. All right, now, speaking of Streets LA, let's take a look at a clip that he shared when he was explaining Xenu to a couple of Scientology Sea Org members.
Hi guys, I'm a suppressive person.
Did you hear that? First, I think that might be my favorite part of this video was when Streets LA walks up and goes, hi guys, I'm a suppressive person. Just lining it up, just letting them know, All right, let's watch this.
Guys, I'm a suppressive person. I don't know if you know.
Does anybody recognize that Sea Org member? Any of my ex-Sea Org friends or even ex-Scientologists? Throw it up in the chat. Put it in the comments if you recognize either one of these Sea Org members. I'm just curious.
So
there's the other guy. Is that? Nah. Tell me if you guys recognize these people.
How's the contract going? I know you guys got a billion-year contract. How's it going? Is it lived up to? I heard you guys only getting $47 a week.
Yeah, it's like 9 a day.
Is that true? $47 a week you guys are getting? You have to work 110 hours?
Anyways, okay, let's take.
Is it true? 110 hours. Have you guys heard about OT3? I know you guys haven't reached OT3 yet, but let me teach you about it. So OT3, there's this guy.
Now, here he comes sharing the Xenu story, of course, where Scientologists are told that if you find out about this prior to being ready and paying all that money and being accepted and inviting onto the upper levels, that you will get pneumonia and die.
A guy named Xenu. You guys heard about Xenu? Oh, wait till you hear about OT3. I'm telling you.
They would not have ever heard of Xenu. Most Scientologists do not know about the Xenu story or body thetans because the vast majority of Scientologists don't actually make it onto the upper levels on the bridge to total freedom. They do not.
This year would normally cost public Scientologists like hundreds of thousands of dollars, sir, to learn. I'm going to give it to you guys for free. The only worry is I heard that if you guys learn something you're not supposed to know, you're going to get pneumonia, or you could possibly explode in flames. But anyway, Xenu from the Galactic Confederacy, it's like 70 million years ago, there was overcrowding in another galaxy, and he froze 1 billion people. And he brought them to Earth, and he dropped them in volcanoes, and he dropped the hydrogen bomb on them. He dropped the hydrogen bomb on the volcanoes. And then the spirit rose up. Those are called thetans. You guys know about thetans, right? The body thetans.
They're just going to pack it up. God, one of them looks so familiar to me, but I can't quite place them.
Anyway, they rose up in the air, and then they captured them and they flung them out, right? They flung them out, and now they're attached to us. And somehow, if we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, you'll help us remove those body thetans.
Yep, you'll help us remove those body thetans. Gosh, they look so familiar to me. So familiar to me. That's why I'm going to go back and read the chat and see in the live chat if anybody recognized who either of those two Sea Org members were, and maybe somebody on the replay. So please jump in those comments. If you do know who they are and you don't want to put it in the comments of the replay, you can email me, Natalie@lifeafteroccult.com. Okay, let's now go over to the other side of the blue buildings where Confident Chris was. And what did Confident Chris find that they were looking at? This gigantic crack in a building known as Lebanon Hall. This building is where Sea Org members live, sleep. It's where, bunk beds. It's where I lived when I was a Sea Org member, and quite a few of my friends as well. In fact, if we have any ex-Sea Org here in the chat, you'll remember Lebanon Hall. But take a look at this giant crack.
That's a big deal. You see that? A 6.0 Chrome CV. At least this part, right? That's a big deal. That's gonna crumble.
I mean, I wonder if this is from the recent earthquake. There was but it was like only a 4 point something earthquake, I think. So maybe just over time. But yeah, that is like quite the crack there. Quite the crack. It's good that they're looking at it. And I'm looking and I'm wondering, are these, they don't look like Sea Org members. Maybe somebody knows. If you saw earlier in the video in the chat, let me know. Because yeah, I'm looking at this going, do you bring in the big guns at that point, structural engineers, to take a look at this? Because it's one thing in the Sea Org, they try to be as self-contained as possible, which means they try to do as much of the work that they need on their own. But something like that, I don't know. I think that might be a little above their pay grade. Hopefully those are professionals checking it out. But yeah, I am Gabriel. That crack in the building is a massive structural failure completely. Yep, it does, Nisa. That whole building looks like it's going to fall apart. Yeah, it really does. Was it a building inspector? Do we have confirmation of that? It should be. It should be. Because it's only a building inspector or a structural engineer or something like that who can say, hey, you guys, here's what you actually need to do to make sure this isn't going to fall off. Lisa says, we actually had 2 earthquakes in a week. One was 4.4 and the other was 5 something. Okay. Maybe that could be it. Being a good point. One good shake will take that down. Oh, you're right. Yep. Oh, now what? Those can't be Cult of Scientology members. They're wearing protective clothing. Oh my God, that's so sad. But that is a really good point, actually. A really good point. Many of the people who've left the Sea organization have talked about the lack of protective gear, even for people on the Estates Project Force, which is Scientology's boot camp. My own daughter, who recently shared her story again on growing up in Scientology, and I think December or January of this past year, I had her on my channel. She talks about that as well, the work they would have them do with no type of protective gear or anything. Now let's hop over to Texas. Let's see. Is that what we're doing? Yes, we are. We're going to go over to Texas because Miss Kim is there and she is letting Scientologists know what the deal is. She's letting them know about SPTV.space, which will show other Scientology organizations around the world being just as empty, and sharing how freeloader debts in Scientology are not enforceable. Because many of you here know that a Scientology staff member, SEERG member, if you do not complete your contract, 2.5 or 5 years for a Scientology staff member, 1 billion years for a SEERG member, you get handed a bill. Those are not enforceable. That is absolutely not enforceable. So let's take a look. This is Miss Kim out in Austin.
SPTV.space. Go check it out. Lots of cameras like mine on other orgs, and they're all downstat.
For Scientologists to see other organizations doing as badly as they are in Austin is huge. So I really do hope when they hear about
Freeloader debt,
that they take a look and actually go see, because with live streaming happening all over the country, you can see how empty the organizations are from San Francisco to Boston.
is not enforceable in the outside world because it's considered training for your job or church services. You cannot collect on that debt.
That's right. You cannot. At one point, too, in the video, you see somebody from Scientology try to pop out and then immediately go back in when they must have realized that Miss Kim was there. And you can follow her or subscribe, and she's out there protesting, usually in Austin. Now, let's go over to Denmark with Scientology Up North and Elron Hub Cult, who have an incredible conversation about healing in Scientology. Let's take a look at that. We're going to look at a couple of clips. They've been out there doing a lot of protesting in Denmark. They've had other people also join them, people who you've seen here on YouTube, the SP chef, Bianca, and others as well.
We need to go back to Bianca and Samuel when they were here. And when I saw them, they did the first protest here in Denmark, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see on them how Scientology destroyed them mentally, physically, whatever you can put it on. And I could see how they felt inside.
And you could recognize some of those feelings as well, right?
Yes.
It is very, and I know you guys have heard this from people, from ex-Scientologists in particular, who go to protest Scientology, to live stream outside of Scientology. For many of us, it can be very difficult in the moment, right? We're able to do it. For some, it's more difficult even in the moment, but it does take a toll for many. You process that afterwards. You process what you saw. You process the stories that you hear of other ex-Scientologists. And this seems to be a lot of what he is describing and talking about.
Because sometimes I felt the same, not as deeply as they felt, probably because they were born in, they never had any life outside, before they left. So they were just in Scientology all the time. We need to go back to Bianca and Samuel.
All right. Now, he also, where is it here? I think I've got another clip. This was so interesting to me because I relate to it so much. And I think people who are under the radar in Scientology, you'll want to hear this. And I mean, for all of you as well, who've never been in Scientology, but are all in on ending this cult. He makes such a great point here about human trafficking and how victims of human trafficking in Scientology do not always recognize that that is what happened. And it can be difficult as well to admit that you were a victim of human trafficking. For some people, that's difficult. Let's listen to him.
Yeah, this week I just realized, I came to the realization that I was a human trafficking victim of Scientology.
Yeah.
And it's hard to admit because, I always play the tough guy, like, I don't care. And, it's like just, it was fun, but it was a little bit more than a decade.
Just fantastic. Link down below so you can see the whole video. Really gives you insight into what it's like for an ex-Scientologist protesting Scientology. And as wonderful as it is for us to connect with each other, it really reinforces how we were not the only ones. In Scientology, we often feel like it was just us. It was just me that was having a hard time. Everybody else is doing great and winning. So it's obviously me, because that's what they convince us of. And we also don't recognize the human trafficking piece, because we're told that that's what we should do, that this is what we owe to Scientology, that we're dedicated Sea Org members, that age is just a number, that we're big beings in little bodies. It doesn't matter what your age is and whatnot. So do check that out. Now, let's go over and take a look at the Perth Scientology Audit. They had a fantastic protest out in Australia yesterday. Lots of video about it. I'm going to share a link down below to this video, but there's a few more on Perth Scientology Audit that you can find. I know Ono Nora had some content up as well supporting the protest. Let's take a look.
Being filmed? Yeah. Woo! Yeah, awesome. I'm not going to say names. We've got the beautiful reconnecting. We've got Cherokee Joy. Woo! Hey! We were late. Woo! Awesome. Yeah. Who's got that one? We have got that one. Oh my God, we didn't even have to sign up and people are honking. Yes. Good. All right, and then we got the clear cog. I'll just give that a little waft around there. Being filmed.
I just love that. We don't even have the sign up and they're already honking. Fantastic. They had so much support out there. Again, go ahead and check out Perth Scientology Audit and other people as well who were there protesting. Just lots of great stuff. That's right, Cubana Chica. Way to go, Aussies. Absolutely. It is so amazing how this protest movement has grown, not just across the United States, but into other countries. And we see a lot of activity in certain countries. We've seen things in Japan. I mean, it really is amazing what we're seeing. Now let's come back over stateside and let's go take a look at a clip from Jenna Miscavige. Jenna Miscavige is here on YouTube. You can find her under Jenna Miscavige. She's an author. She wrote the book Beyond Belief. In fact, I'm listening to it now again on Audible. I read it years ago. She also happens to be the niece of David Miscavige, the dictator of Scientology. And she shares in this video, she answers questions pretty much almost each day. So if you send her a question about her experience about Scientology, she is answering these questions, trying to answer as many as she can. And in this particular video, she's talking about what will get you declared a suppressive person in Scientology using her own suppressive person declare and what Scientology charged her with, which is beyond ridiculous.
This is the list of all the reasons why I got declared a suppressive person. So if I did something as small as tell my friend, okay, I want to leave staff now, I could be declared a suppressive person. Another example of why somebody could be declared a suppressive person is reporting or threatening to report Scientology or Scientologists to civil authorities in an effort to suppress Scientology or Scientologists from practicing or receiving standard Scientology. So for instance, in this case, Scientology was trying to take away my cell phone and I didn't want them to. And they did this repeatedly over a period of months. And I said, oh, I'm going to call the cops if you take away my phone.
Yeah, that is a suppressive act. So imagine that in Scientology, as a Scientologist or a Sea Org member, even when you feel like, you know what, I feel like they can't hold me here. I feel like this is a violation of my rights. You've been so indoctrinated to accept this and to know that also if you report them to the police, that you will be declared a suppressive person. And there goes members of your family, especially if you come from a multi-generational family in Scientology. So great video. She goes on to give an even better explanation about so many more points, and it's just going to blow your mind. Link down below. Go check out that whole video on Jenna Miscavige's channel. Cubana Chica, I agree. Jenna is such a strong woman. She didn't just leave Scientology. I mean, she was a Miscavige who left Scientology and then wrote a book about it and has been an activist exposing Scientology for decades since she left. So I love that she's doing this and answering questions. I think it's really cool. Okay, now let's see. Let's go over now to, let's look at a clip from Aaron at Growing Up in Scientology, who shares an amazing new resource on SPTV.space. We touched on it the other day, but I'm going to keep bringing this up because this is a way that we can all here in the United States do what we can to see about getting Scientology's tax exempt status revoked. It is a big election year here in the United States, and now is a great time to reach out to your elected officials, and SPTV.space has just made it easier for us to be able to do that and also track the responses. And remember, you can reach out to, if you and your friends get together and you're in the same district and you share that representative, even if somebody reached out, you should still reach out, because it's all about numbers. The numbers of people coming through and saying, hey, where do you stand on Scientology's tax exempt status? So let's take a look at this clip.
There's a new resource. There's a new page that is on this website under the resources drop-down menu. You'll see down here, it says House Reps List. When you click on that link, it brings you to this brand new page. And this page is Revoke Scientology's Tax Exempt Status. Find your district. This page right here allows all of you watching in the United States to just with a quick little click of a button, find out who are the candidates.
Now you find out who your candidates are, and also you can, let's see, let me pull it up here a little bit further. You want to find your district, choose which candidates to contact, and either BCC or forward your letter and their responses to House Reps at SPTV.space. And in doing so, they can track the responses. And remember, just because someone has responded and been reached out to, if you live in that district for that elected or hopeful, like somebody running, you still want to reach out, because it's all about numbers, the number of people reaching out in each district for each congressperson. There is even an example letter that you can follow, and directions when you click on, I believe, the template. Check this out.
Okay, it says, please use or customize the template below. Send the letter to any candidate in your district. Blind copy or send a copy to House Reps at SPTV.space. Forward their responses to the website. SPTV.space is going to track which candidates for the House of Representatives have already been contacted. It's also going to track what the response is. And just because a candidate's been contacted and just because they've responded doesn't mean other people in that district cannot also do the same. This is so freaking exciting. Pan.
It truly is. It truly is. And that's over on SPTV.space. Great resources. We're going to be talking about this a lot because of the election year that we were in. And this is a great opportunity and chance to reach out. Well, it's, here are people trying to be elected. Well, where do you stand on this? People already elected. Where do you stand on this? So please do go ahead and check that out at SPTV.space on the resource tab. Okay, now moving on. Let's talk about Relatable Reese. Have you guys been following? Tell me in the chat. Give me a 1 if you've been following the whole Relatable Reese and the Royal Order of Jesters, because I have been having my mind blown by this. Just when you think that when you grow up in a cult that you have seen it all, right? I remember leaving Scientology, and even though I'd known that there were other cults, I had no idea until leaving. Honestly, I would say in the last year, I feel like there's been so many documentaries, Granny G's watching, Copper Top, Wheezy, Professor Kakan, Lori. Yep, that is awesome. So you guys have been watching and following what's been happening. And we're going to take a look at a clip of a short that she did. But if you've been following and if you've not been following, it is a fascinating story because Relatable Reese grew up in Scientology, left Scientology, right? But then found out, actually, let me back it up. If we do this in the correct order, and all of you Relatable Reese fans, you can let me know if I'm getting it incorrect. She grows up in Scientology. Then at some point, she marries an older gentleman who was a member of the Royal Order of Jesters, Fred. Except Fred stops going to these meetings, to these sex parties, basically. Then Fred passes away and she marries this other guy who is also a member of the Royal Order of Jesters. And she finds out the length of what happens at these parties and what goes on. And then she hatches a plan to be able to leave her marriage, in part by making a living on YouTube and coming up with the money to get a divorce and move and leave. And she has been digging into this and hearing from people from the Royal Order of Jesters and some of the women involved in these activities and these parties. And I'm telling you, it just sounds so cloak and dagger. They had a big party recently in Kansas City at the Ozarks. But let's take a look at the clip here. This is from Relatable Reese.
These women are quite tight knit as well, but they've got this safety net of all these men under them, meaning you've got doctors, lawyers, judges, cops, politicians, all these rich jesters apparently make these girls feel super safe, like nothing's going to happen to them. We got word that there were two girls. One was a bartender and one we're pretty sure I was told was and a judge from Wichita was driving the girls. Here comes the judge, was driving the girls to the party. That actually did take place. Our friend, the bartender, was arrested and charged. Not to mention, it was with a judge and two girls, probably half his age.
He was sent away with a warning.
He was sent away with a warning.
The judge who's driving the girls to the party gets sent away with a warning. What in the world? 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 It just keeps getting crazier and crazier the more that she digs into this. And I have a fascination with all cults, no doubt because of my own cult upbringing and finding out and trying to understand this human behavior. And I don't know if it's a need or what it is. And the more that you learn about this, the more it just sounds, it just really truly does sound like a cult. And particularly a sex cult with what they're being accused of doing with these parties. Now, there's a video of a guy here on YouTube, Conspiracy International, who did a video recently about, what was his about? It was about the Freemasons and harassment. And he brings Scientology into it, how Scientology disconnection is similar to some of the things that happen in the Freemasons. And he mentioned another cult, I think, as well. But we're going to take a look at that clip because I think we're going to see this more and more, which is why it's great that on Relatable Reese that she's talking about it, because it really, it gets the conversation going. I mean, across different platforms when it comes to these cults. They're dark. They are just dark. Anne says eyes wide shut because they are crusted over from STDs and pink eye. Oh my gosh. I just think that's so funny. STD and pink eye. Okay, all right, back to it. This guy's video. Let's see what he has to say about this and how he mentioned Scientology as well.
For anyone who doesn't know what gang stalking is a systematic form of harassment that's carried out by multiple people for many different reasons. It's done by the Church of Scientology. You can Google that. They call it fair game. It's used by governments. An example would be the socialist East German government, they would use the Stasi to gang stalk people. They called it Zersitzung, which translates to like corrosion in English. And it's all about breaking down your mind. It's all about either making you end up in a psych ward or in prison, just like they did with Operation Freakout. If you Google Operation Freakout, there was an author in the United States who was speaking out against, not speaking out against, for anyone who doesn't know what gang stalking is.
Just interesting. And he gets into this whole idea of gang stalking, which sounds like fair game in Scientology. And I think it's so interesting that these different, when you see this a lot with these different cults where they practice fair game. And let's be honest, that's practiced outside of cults too. I mean, we kind of see it here on the internet at times. And it's crazy. It definitely, you get to, for me, it helps my understanding of how this happened in Scientology, because there's so many other cults and organizations where this type of behavior has occurred and people do it. So Scientology puts a different name on it, fair game, and then has maybe different tactics. But the idea of trying to, there's a difference between exposing something or someone with factual information, like happens with Scientology. There are firsthand accounts of what happens. What Scientology does to fair game someone is make up stuff about them and try to use it to discredit them because they're the person sharing the story. They're the person who experienced the abuse. It blows my mind. I've become so much more aware in the last year or so of how common this type of behavior is, not just in Scientology, but in other places as well. Okay, now let's talk about Leah Remini versus Laura Prepon. Now, if you don't know Laura Prepon, she was a Scientologist for many years. She's mostly known for, she was on That 70s Show, and she was on Orange is the New Black. Now, she left Scientology, I want to say it's been about 7 years. And some time ago, Leah Remini did a podcast and was basically called out Laura Prepon on not speaking out about Scientology and not, just saying just that she left. In fact, let's look at, let me see if I have it here. Let's first look at a video that shares when Laura Prepon left Scientology, which, let's see, this is, I think, a couple years old, but I think she left a total of 7 years ago. Check this out.
Actress Laura Prepon reveals she has exited the Church of Scientology. In a recent interview with People, the Orange is the New Black alum explains, "I'm no longer practicing Scientology. I've always been very open-minded, even since I was a child. I was raised Catholic and Jewish. I've prayed in churches, meditated in temples. I've studied Chinese meridian theory. I haven't practiced Scientology in close to 5 years, and it's no longer part of my life." As far as her current practices go, Laura notes that she finds comfort in meditation, which she does with her husband, Ben Foster, who has never practiced Scientology.
So she leaves Scientology. She pretty much lets people know she doesn't practice Scientology. She does these other things. But Indigo Twin in Orange is the New Black, she was, I forget her character's name, but she was the girlfriend in prison of the main character, the blonde. The blonde, the main character, her girlfriend, once they're in prison, is the character that Laura Prepon played. All right, so let's look now at this clip of Leah Remini sharing what she thinks about that and kind of her feelings on Laura Prepon leaving Scientology but not being vocal about it.
Some people, like Laura, feel that they don't have a responsibility to speak out. Do I respect it? I mean, not really.
And for those of you who are listening and not watching, I'll read this. Leah Remini doesn't respect that Laura Prepon hasn't used her platform to advocate against Scientology once she left the controversial church.
I think people have a responsibility to do their part. Not everybody feels that they have a responsibility. They feel they should just go on with their lives while some of us take a beating.
Says Remini told Daily Beast Live she reached out to Prepon when she left, but reiterated not everybody who has a voice uses it. Prepon announced in August she left Scientology 5 years ago. Now, this was a couple years ago when this was done. Remini explained her need to speak out against the church since she had been a vocal Scientologist who got people interested in the religion. And I get that. There's, when you've recruited people into Scientology or you've encouraged people to do the bridge to total freedom and you leave, you kind of want to go back and fix that. I think if you can, is a thing with many of us. And on Orange is the New Black, her character's name was Alex, by the way. Okay, so here's what I want to know from you guys, because this is something that I've kind of kicked around in my head. Because on one hand, I feel that people leaving Scientology do not have an obligation to talk about it because of their own healing, because of, for many, what they've gone through, they still need to process. For some, it might be for family reasons or job reasons. I think it's a lot of why we don't hear Nicole Kidman talking about Scientology is because she'd like to have a relationship with her children. And the minute she starts going off about Scientology, there is definitely no hope of that happening. So I want to know what you guys think, because having said that, let's look at a celebrity who has a larger platform and uses that platform to promote Scientology, to show acceptance for Scientology, to attend the Celebrity Center galas and all of that, as Laura Prepon did, as Leah Remini did. But when Leah Remini left Scientology, she wrote a book about it. She's been an advocate, Scientology in the Aftermath, the show, all those things, right? Laura Prepon, Jason Lee, other people who've quietly left Scientology but were celebrities and have not said anything, have not come forward. What I want to know is, do you think, and give me a 1 in the chat if it's yes, 1 in the chat if you think celebrities have an obligation to use their platform to speak out at least one time about Scientology and them leaving. And then 2, if you think no, they're like everybody else and don't have an obligation to be able to do that. I honestly have not made a decision on this because I'm torn about it, because working on the SPTV Foundation, there are people newly who've left Scientology who are not and may not ever be ready to talk about it. And I support them not doing that. With the primary focus there is their healing and helping them get back onto their feet and find other tools to get through that. But with celebrities, where I feel a little different is because they had a bigger platform. They had a bigger effect. They reached more people. So is there an obligation to kind of go through and undo that? Okay, it's really interesting because I see a lot of 1s, but a lot of 2s as well. So if you're catching this on the replay, can you tell me in the comments, 1, if you think celebrities who leave Scientology have an obligation to speak out because they have a larger platform, or 2, does that fall into the category of just like everybody else, where and by everybody else, I mean people who leave Scientology and don't actually, just don't have the bandwidth and aren't ready to speak out about it. Because, think about it. When you've been in Scientology for any length of time or any high control group, there's a lot of healing to happen, just a lot of healing to happen. And it's not everybody who can just go on YouTube and talk about it and share it. Sometimes that takes years. So I do feel too that Laura Prepon, as an ex-Scientologist, we don't know what she went through, what she experienced, but what is the deal? Okay, your answers are just fascinating to me here. Pippi Longstocking says, wishing Leah wins her case, but is hardly in a place to tell others what to do, being far from flawless in her conduct towards victims. Yeah, absolutely. There are so many different things that have occurred within this movement and disagreements, and people having different points of view on maybe how somebody should do something. And it's not that one is right and one is wrong, but overall, the most important thing is that Scientology is exposed at the end of the day, and people exposing Scientology, that those voices be highlighted, that those be shared, because that's how you get the word out. And especially through the stories of victims, which is why it's so important to support the victims of Scientology. But I'm looking at all your comments here. It's so interesting. Aunt Fuzz says celebrities have money to pay for Scientology. The peons below them don't. The peons are the ones who get abused, not the celebrities with money. Now, in most cases, that is true, but there are situations where we know that is not the case. You look at what happened, the retaliation and fair gaming of director Paul Haggis after he spoke to Lawrence Wright in Going Clear in the book and in the documentary. You think about the fair game and what had been being done to Leah Remini even when she spoke out. They still get fair game. Within Scientology itself, Scientology celebrities in good standing, there have been a few who did experience abuse. Think about Nazanin, who was the young lady who was recruited to be Tom Cruise's girlfriend. She was a Scientologist. And because she dared to ask David Miscavige to repeat himself because she was having a hard time understanding his accent, this girl was immediately given the boot by, not even by Tom Cruise. He had Tommy Davis do it, who was at that time the spokesperson for Scientology. And she ended up having to clean bathrooms and was punished because she dared to embarrass Tom Cruise and call out David Miscavige. It's so stupid. So it is not a one-for-one that celebrities in Scientology do not experience abuse. I would say the majority of them don't, not in the traditional ways of abuse that many Sea Org members or staff members or other Scientologists experience, because they want to give them this whole kind of like vanilla view of Scientology and make it seem like it's not that bad. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to read your guys' comments on this and see what you think. Melissa, good point. Jason Begay spoke out once and then moved on, but at least he spoke out. Exactly. I thought about that too. Jason Begay is a good example. He did one video with, I think it was with Mark Bunker back in the day. It was an excellent interview and video, and he lays it out. It's very raw, and he talks about what happened in Scientology and really how it messed him up. And then he went on to, have his career, and he's doing great things. So that's a good example too. At least he spoke about it one time. It's not like you have to continue if that is, not what you want to do. Sandy makes a good point. Maybe Laura is trying to distance herself from Masterson, and speaking out on Scientology would drag her back into that drama. It very well could, because there would be questions about that. There definitely would be questions about that. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back and read your guys' comments on this because I am fascinated by what you're saying about this. Yeah, it's a topic I think we're going to keep talking about for sure. Before you guys head out today, could you do me a favor? Hit that like button, hit subscribe. I also may be coming back on in just a little over an hour with Ono Nora. We're going to be doing a video talking about dating in Scientology. We looked at a Scientology dating website the other day, and I've gotten some questions recently about does Scientology have their own version of a trad wife? And a trad wife is a traditional wife. And if you've been watching YouTube, and a lot of stories coming out of the Mormon trad wives, which are seen as being very cult-like. We're going to touch on that as well, and whether or not there is a version of that in Scientology. And it might actually surprise you what we're going to talk about. So tune in for that. That's going to be 1 p.m. Central Time today. And if you can't catch it live, hopefully you can be with us on the replay. In the meantime, everybody, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you get out and have an amazing cult-free day.